I want to take you down as far as we can get before we run out of light, before we have to turn around, and then I'll give you kind of a rundown of my thinking behind taking pictures to make them better, so that when we come back we can compare them with the pictures going up, basically, and then see if there's any improvement or if you are liking them better. It's all very subjective. Art is very subjective, so if a photo is not good to you, that's what it is to you, right? But if you're able to take a picture on your camera, on your phone as well as your camera, that'd be great, because then you can share it directly to Instagram today, and we can kind of like review them later and talk and chat about it. But yeah, so this walk is not going to be super technical. It's going to be more, how do you get a good composition? How do you think about photography a little bit better, right? How do you like reach a little further than the average person, not just stand here and take a picture, but maybe get a little lower, a little higher, and just put a little more effort into things. Settings we can go over if you want to talk to me on the way. I'm not going to talk about it with the group because it's just not, we're not there yet. We've got to start at the ground level and kind of talk about the why behind photography first. But pick my brain as we go. Feel free to do all that. If you're able to post on your phone, on social media while you're walking, use the XplrWhtlnd hashtag that's at the top there. No vowels, all run together. And then you should just be able to look at that later, and so we can kind of compare them up and down, and I'll pull it up on my phone. We can all kind of go through them together, which will be cool. Sweet. Yeah, don't share every shot you take. If you take like
avoid tangents, it said, so don't go off.
Not that kind of tangent, but yes. Don't, like, if you're taking burst photos and you've got hundreds, don't upload all of them. We want to view like what's the best handful you've got of a certain subject, and try to remember the subject that you took a picture of going up, so that when we're coming back, you can get a similar shot, but with the new knowledge that you've gained, or if you have an idea that you want to share with somebody else, like collaborate together. We're all here to learn together and grow together. No one's better than anyone else. We're just at, different phases of life is all. Cool. So the biggest thing with this is I want to build a community in Wheatland that doesn't exist, obviously, at least in a public way, for photography. Everyone should learn photography because it helps in sharing your memories in a right way, in a more effective way. But also for business, because you need to sell stuff, right? And so if you need to sell stuff, you need to be able to present it well. And the better you present it, the more likely people will trust you. The more people trust you, the more sales you will get. So it's for everybody, really. And if someone doesn't care to learn photography, then you have that ability to sell your services to people here in town, in Platte County. There are some big fish out here. You don't always have to go for the little bitty people who will never pay you, okay? Yeah. It exists. It exists. And then I would say you can kind of collaborate together on this walk, like get feedback from other people, get ideas from other people. If you see someone go over to the side and kind of get a different angle, you can kind of shadow them and be like, cool, what's your thinking behind that? And get their thoughts. You can do that with me, you can do that with anyone else, or seek that feedback and be open to it. And if people say your photo sucks, be like, that's cool, it does suck, yeah, I'll do better. But it's also, remember, it's very subjective, so separate yourself from your work. You are not your work. If you take a bad picture, that's not a function of you, right? So just want to be kind of open in that way and build that culture. Because a lot of people, especially when they're new to the arts, they think that that is who they are. They think their art comes from them, and it does. But you have to learn to separate that from who you are, so you don't get brought down. Because you're always getting better. And the show photos you took yesterday, you look back and you're like, those weren't that good. Because today you're getting better. Right. Cool. Okay, so a couple things to think about before we go. You're not responsible if you get hurt. Right?
No tripping.
Pay attention. We're all older here. We're not oblivious.
Looked at me when you said that.
But I will let you know that even as a passionate photographer, I can get so involved in what's in my viewfinder that I forget where I am. So just be aware of cars. Look out for people who are maybe like looking at the viewfinder and they're in the middle of the road or something. Just let others know, and just be really wise in that regard. When we're crossing over, we're going to be going this way, so we are going to cross over the ditch and the bridge. Just be careful. Obvious, basic stuff. Cool.
Don't jump in the bridge.
Right.
Yeah. Do not jump in.
Do not jump in.
Yes, do not jump in. And then something else to think about is respect the privacy of others. It's not just us.
Yeah.
We're all probably open to being taken, pictures of each other. But if you're not, share that with someone else. Say, please don't take a picture of me. Or if you don't want us to take a video because we're videoing this for people who can't make it, let them know so that we don't video you. But also pay attention to the neighbors. We're going to be walking by houses. Don't point cameras into people's windows or to people's license plate or cars. Like, try to get an inanimate subject or a subject that has your permission. If you pass somebody that you're walking by who you think would be a cool subject, ask if they would be down to take a quick picture. We should get going because the light's going down and it's really pretty right now. We've got amazing trees.
Yep.
The smoke is actually kind of making a neat mist, kind of like a haze that can make it some really neat atmospheric look. Yeah, we should get going with that and then we can go this way. Any questions before we start? Feel good? You're on auto mode? Anyone else?
Mine will mostly be on auto, probably. Yeah. It gets
Yeah?
the best light.
Okay, cool. If you have any questions or shots aren't coming out the way that you want, grab me. We'll make sure that we're getting them. But yeah. So like I said, I'm not going to give any advice on how to take pictures yet until we get halfway and then come back so we can compare. Okay. Nice.
How beautiful the sky is.
If this becomes a regular thing in the future, we can have different themes or go to different places. So, I mean, your suggestions are welcome for everything. We could say like, today is a fall theme if you wanted, but
Yeah.
I don't want to limit us for this first one.
Yeah.
But it's a thing that could happen. Quick thing I could show you guys right now since we're here. This is a perfect opportunity to show something about perspective. So this shot here, if you stand right in line with this bridge, you would almost consider this, it's called one-point perspective, because what it is basically all the lines that you see from the bridge and from the ground kind of merge together to one point in the very far distance, right? So if you get yourself and you look at your viewfinder and you level your camera nicely and you get yourself perfectly centered, that's instantly like a really cool composition. So if y'all want to try that real quick, I think that'd be a really good exercise if you want. Anyone else want to give it a shot?
Shot.
I said that intentionally. No, I didn't.
Been thinking about that one all day. When can I use it?
That's awesome. Anyone else? How's everything looking at?
Gotcha.
Oh.
There's tons of opportunities. I don't ever have the guts to lay on the ground. I should. I'm too wimpy. This path is actually awesome looking.
Isn't it so great?
Yeah, really cool.
Mm-hmm.
If you guys want someone to be your subject, feel free to ask them.
Yeah, stop it from turning black.
Blacking. It's like one of the best hacks. Is just get really close to something and instantly awesome.
Would you be willing to stand here and I can pose you real quick and I can take a picture?
I'm gonna be. Should I? Let me divert the camera.
If you don't see me, oh girl.
Gosh, not too bad.
Right?
Hey, that's dangerous. That's cool. Signs are pretty awesome too.
True.
The sky's so cool because it's blue and then orange, which is almost like a perfect complementary color going on. So that split could be really awesome to try to shoot. All right, we're gonna have to keep hustling. Spraying it on it like that way. My lens is too wide, but if anyone has a zoom and want to try that, it's a shot.
Kind of have a broken shutter so the lens doesn't open all the way.
Hey, go ahead, I won't pick you up for
He's got us covered. Oh.
You coming, Dix?
This is illegal.
What am I crossing?
Oh yeah.
how'd y'all feel? Did you feel you got something kind of unique and interesting, kind of fun? Did you learn anything just by doing it? Yeah. What we'll do is we'll go back and just apply some of the things we're going to talk about and see how different they are. If you improve or if it got worse because my advice sucks.
It got worse.
So I just want to talk real quickly about how I personally think about approaching photos, and you can take these and use all of them, use one of them, use two of them, but it's important just to know what to think about when you're finding an angle on a photo so you can get what works best for the subject. So first and foremost, should you be shooting in landscape or portrait? That's what I see a lot of people who don't even think that far about their photos, and I saw all you were pretty much doing that because I think here we have some sort of sense for it. But if your subject is tall, if it's a person, often you want to put it into portrait mode. That's why it's called portrait mode. Very commonly it matches your subject. If it's a landscape, that's why it's called landscape mode. Typically you want to get the vast expanse. Not always, but sometimes. So consider your subject. Is it tall? Is it wide? And then pivot to match that as best you can. Cool. And then the next most important thing is like study the light. We lost the light now, unfortunately.
Yeah.
But if you pay attention to where the light's coming from, it can really inform how you're taking your picture. If your light is straight on, it could be really unique, but I guess it would be really flat and maybe not very dynamic. But if your light's coming from the side or maybe a little front to the side, you get more of a contrasty shadow look, and it kind of brings more of a, I guess, interest to your frame. And contrast is something that humans like in a lot of things. It could be contrast from the quietness to the loudness in music, or contrast of color, contrast of light. Luminance is a big thing that people don't think about, the actual value of things. What's bright, what's dark. That's a very important thing with contrast. Also scale. So when it comes to contrast, you want to think what's in the foreground, what's in the background, what's in the mid. And if there's no foreground, that's okay. At least you thought about that, and it doesn't. Maybe your shot didn't need a foreground. I noticed a couple of the young ladies were taking leaves and holding them in front of their lens because that adds a really neat artifacting foreground, kind of like a blurred out effect there that kind of adds to the shot. So you can do stuff like that. If it's out of frame, it doesn't matter as long as whatever's in frame looks right. So if your finger is an inch off the frame, as long as you don't see it, no one will know the better, and it makes a more dynamic shot. So you can think about those kind of things. And another thing to think about when you're composing a shot, when you've considered that, is you want to start orbiting around. Don't just pick up your camera and just shoot, right? You want to think, well, what angle makes the most sense? What's in the background? What's distracting or what's not distracting? Move around your subject, and then move up and down, and kind of like maybe get down lower so that there's a sky, or maybe you want to get up higher so that it's just the ground. But you want to pay attention to horizon lines and all sorts of stuff, because there's a thing that's in my notes. I don't know if any of you have heard of it, but it's called tangents. Are you familiar with a tangent? Who's not familiar with what a tangent is? Not like going off on a tangent, but a visual tangent. Anyone know what a visual tangent is?
No.
Okay, so a visual tangent, you probably recognize it. It makes people uncomfortable when you take a photo of somebody and the horizon line is going straight through their neck. You may not think about it, but it's uncomfortable. Whereas if that horizon line was through their waist, it'd be a lot less distracting. So that's also true when it comes to things in the background or the foreground that are like sticking out. Like if it's going into somebody's face, it's probably not very cool. Like in the shot, it's covering part of their face, or it's in the background, it's coming out of their shoulder. Like you want to avoid tangents, lines, things that are close enough, but not too close. I would say the idea was to get enough space between that tangent and your subject so that it's not crossing or getting too close and making it feel uncomfortable and claustrophobic, or just downright like invasive of the space of the person, because the camera sees different than we do, right?
Yeah.
So tangents are a big thing that will set you apart from like 90% of people who shoot on cameras, because they don't even know what a tangent is. I'd say 95% don't know what a tangent is. So that's something to think about too, okay? So we got landscape, portrait, shadows, the direction of light, finding the better angle, orbit, raise up, raise down, and kind of think about elevation, midground, foreground, background, okay? And then you want to isolate your subject, avoid your tangent, which we talked about. So isolating your subject means there's a few different ways to do that. The most common way is to get them on a background that's not distracting. Or if they're wearing a green shirt, put them on a red background. Kind of make some contrast so that they're standing out, so that whatever you look at in the frame, as soon as you look at it, that's what you know you're supposed to be looking at. So that's also contrast as well. So like isolate your subject in whatever way. There's a lot of ways to do it. If you get into fancier cameras, nicer lenses, nicer sensors, You can separate it with what's called depth of field, so you can make the background nice and blurry and the foreground nice and blurry, and your subject's like tack sharp. So that in combination with lighting and everything else just strengthens your composition depending on what you're going for, okay? Cool, so we talked about all that stuff. Avoid tangents, don't crop people at weird places. That's another thing too. Don't chop people off at the elbows and the neck or the feet. Like if you're getting a full body shot, get the full body shot. Don't chop off their toes or their ankles. Like go for the whole thing. If it's a mid shot, you want to chop at a place that just feels natural. You don't want to go right at the knee, or you maybe right here could be okay, but typically the waist is better. If it's a close up, typically the chest up is what you want. Don't chop off their forehead, leave enough space. You know, you can think about the rule of thirds too. I'm not going to go over that. It's a little more of a technical thing, and it's, I think, less helpful to learn the rule of thirds than to actually practice good composition. But you want to make sure that like the balance of the photo isn't so far to one side that when you look at it, you're like doing this. It like feels heavy, you know, in one corner or the other. So that's something to think about too. But I wouldn't worry about that just yet, unless you're already past that point. But cool. And then the biggest thing is you have to learn the rules first before you can break them effectively, but it's the whole life of a creator is breaking rules. That's what you do as a creator, but you can't break them effectively unless you know why you're breaking them. So you need to know the why, you need to know the rules, and then say, oh, this doesn't need a foreground, this doesn't need a background, or maybe I'm going for a really off easy look, so I should tilt it. That's called a Dutch angle. Like tilt your camera, get some things that feel uneasy. If it's like a horror film you're doing, or it's like a shoot that you're doing that should feel really weird, then you can break those rules. If you want it to feel supernatural, you might follow more of the rules, things like that. So they're more just guidelines, but you need to know they exist so that you can be informed of how to break them. So that's it.
Thank you, John.
Thank you guys. So I want you to kind of take these things, go through the list, just the main bullet points, and as we approach subjects on the way back, which unfortunately we've lost the light, but we can get creative, and we can, there's still light coming from that direction even though it's not a sun. That's still where the main light's coming from, so most of your light's coming from the west side. So you can consider that stuff as you're taking your shots. And then just go through that list and just kind of try a couple things and see how your shot improves with just that simple mindset of going a little deeper with how you take your pictures and not just like shooting standing up at the same old angle. And then something else to learn too is like these gals here were doing some really awesome things where they get really close to a subject like this. Think about stuff like that too. Add interest to your shot, get a little more creative. One really easy hack is to just have something in the foreground really close, like right here. It can add some really cool things. So, any questions? Anything that you want to teach me that I don't know? Because there's tons I don't know. Cool, awesome. Well, we can start heading back. We can keep shooting and have fun. And then when people from high school are like, how come your selfies are so good and mine are so bad? Then they'll want to come for the photo walk.
Photo walk, man.
I will say, even though the light is getting like darker, don't be afraid to try some interesting shots. Use these lights that are in the overhang. Yeah. And maybe try to shift people around and see kind of what you can get and lower the exposure on your phone or whichever device you have if you can. I wouldn't worry about it too much. And then try to make something unique out of the low light, because cameras can see as long as you know how to make them see. Like, the paparazzi here? The light. Yeah, perfect. There's like back just a smidge. Can we do a group photo? Just to kind of close out, first of all, like, thank you guys for coming.
Yeah.
Even though it wasn't a huge group, I think it was awesome because it's a bit more intimate and just able to like connect with everyone a little deeper and talk more about like things we're passionate about. And I think a lot of the creativity is going to be really cool to see. So definitely try to post up your pictures as soon as you can. I could start a Facebook group if you guys want, so we can stay connected. And
That'd be cool. That's really the only way I can share my pictures.
Okay.
Let's do Facebook then.
Cool. We can do a Facebook group. We'll call it XplrWhtlnd without the okay. I'll send invites to as many of you as I can. And then I really recommend just get in there and like talk to each other and ask for feedback. Like, I took this picture this week. What do you think? And you can all like kind of give feedback and get stuff going that way. Yeah, I think you guys are really awesome. I'm excited to see everybody's pictures. I wish I had more time. But yeah, thank you guys so much. That's everything. Yeah. I really appreciate it.
Thank you so much. Yay! I can't wait to see everybody's stuff.
This was also meant to be like a gauge of who, like, do we have enough people for a class in Wheatland, enough interest? And I think there could be if we reached enough people, but it might take some time. So you can like all talk about it and see. It would be a paid class, like it would have to be, because otherwise it just wouldn't be feasible to do. But if we get enough interest and we can start it up, I think that'd be awesome. Even in the winter, there's plenty to do because there's a lot of stuff you can do in the studio with lighting, and I have all the equipment we can use. So it's possible, but I have a feeling unless you know, something crazy happens, we get a huge surge of people, it probably won't happen until next spring.
Yeah.
But we can continue to meet like monthly or every 2 months or however often we want to, but we can
Love
get in
that
that
with the
Facebook
walks.
group and see
Yeah.
and just get together.
Yeah.
Yeah, absolutely.
Different places.